Well, well, well. Rachel Reeves wanted to squeeze the rich until the pips squeaked. And guess what? They've done exactly that. By packing their Louis Vuitton and heading straight for Monaco. Welcome back to British Tribune, where we don't just report the news, we tell you what it actually means for your wallet, your future, and your rapidly shrinking tax base. Kindly hit that subscribe, like, and share button for daily breaking. Picture this, your Chancellor Rachel Reeves, sitting in number 11, probably sipping tea from a mug that says World's Okayest Economics Graduate. You've got a brilliant plan to fill the Treasury's coffers by taxing the super-rich into oblivion. What could possibly go wrong? Well, as it turns out, absolutely everything. Because while you were busy calculating how much money you could extract from Britain's wealthiest, they were calculating something else entirely, the distance between London and Monaco. And here's the kicker that'll make your head spin faster than a politician's promise during election season. Monaco's property market is now hotter than a fresh scandal in Westminster, with rents shooting up by as much as 37%. That's not inflation, folks. That's what happens when you create the world's most expensive game of musical chairs. And Britain just lost its seat. Let's break down this economic masterpiece, shall we? Back in April, our dear Chancellor decided to abolish the non-dom tax system. For those keeping score at home, this was the arrangement that let high-income earners who lived abroad avoid paying UK tax on their foreign income. Sounds reasonable, right? Tax people who live here on money they make elsewhere. What's the worst that could happen? Well, turns out when you threaten to tax someone at 67%, and yes, you heard that right, 67%, they don't just roll over and thank you for the privilege. They do what any rational person would do when faced with having 2/3 of their income confiscated. They leave. It's almost like rich people have options or something. Revolutionary concept. I know. But here's where it gets absolutely delicious in its irony. More than 10,000 millionaires left Britain last year. 10,000. That's not a brain drain. That's a brain tsunami. And these aren't just any old millionaires sitting around counting their money. These are the people who contribute a disproportionate amount of tax and business activity to the UK. They're the ones creating jobs, investing in businesses, and yes, paying the bulk of our tax receipts. Paolo Petrini from Monaco's largest real estate agency isn't exactly crying into his champagne about this development. He's seeing British clients flooding in from London, Manchester, Birmingham, and Edinburgh faster than MPs fleeing a expenses scandal. And they're not just mentioning the tax changes as a minor inconvenience. They're citing them as a major reason for their grand exit from Britain. But wait, there's more. Because apparently, getting financially mugged by the taxman wasn't quite enough motivation for some of our departing millionaires. They're also mentioning a little thing called safety. You know, that quaint old concept of being able to walk down the street without getting robbed. Imagine that. Sadiq Khan's London, that glittering beacon of progressive governance, has apparently become so crime-ridden that millionaires are literally willing to pay 37% more in rent just to live somewhere they won't get mugged. That's not just damning. That's absolutely catastrophic. When rich people start treating Monaco rent prices as a bargain compared to London's crime rates, you know you've hit rock bottom and started digging. The numbers coming out of Monaco are frankly staggering. Average rent increases of 8 to 15% across roughly 17,000 residences, with some ultra-prime segments seeing that jaw-dropping 37% spike. And remember, Monaco is smaller than Hyde Park with a postcode that makes Kensington look affordable. When demand suddenly explodes because half of Britain's wealthy elite decides they'd rather live next to Prince Albert than deal with Rachel Reeves and Sadiq Khan, prices don't just rise, they rocket into orbit. Florian Valeri from Barnes Valet Agency has been hearing stories that would make a crime novelist blush. British people arriving in Monaco fresh from being robbed in the UK, their decisions to leave accelerated by what he diplomatically calls insecurity. That's estate agent speak for your country has become a lawless hellscape where even millionaires aren't safe. And here's a detail that'll make you laugh and cry simultaneously. There's a boom in requests for fully furnished apartments because people don't want to wait 2 or 3 months to furnish a place. They want out of Britain so badly they're willing to pay 20% above market rate just to avoid the hassle of buying furniture. That's not relocation, that's evacuation. The hotel residency market is exploding too, as wealthy Brits essentially use Monaco hotels as extended test drives to see if they want to make the move permanent. It's like Airbnb for the apocalypse, except the apocalypse is British tax policy and London crime rates. Now, the Treasury, bless their optimistic little hearts, issued a statement that reads like it was written by someone who's never met basic economics. They claim the UK remains highly attractive because our main capital gains tax rate is lower than other G7 European countries. That's like saying your restaurant is attractive because the food poisoning rate is lower than the competition. Technically true, but missing the rather crucial point that people are still getting sick. They also claimed their new system is simpler and more attractive than the previous one. Simpler? Maybe. More attractive? Well, if 37% rent increases in Monaco and a mass exodus of millionaires is your idea of attractive policy outcomes, then sure, mission accomplished. Meanwhile, the Met Police, presumably taking a break from their busy schedule of not solving crimes, chimed in with some truly spectacular statistics. Thefts in London's West End are down 20%, they claim, and violence against persons is down 8%. Congratulations, you've managed to make London slightly less of a crime-infested nightmare. Unfortunately, slightly less terrible isn't exactly a compelling marketing slogan for keeping millionaires in the country. The deeper issue here isn't just about rich people moving to tax havens, though that's certainly part of it. It's about the fundamental misunderstanding of how wealth creation actually works in a globalized economy. When you have capital mobility, you don't get to treat rich people like captive resources you can squeeze indefinitely. They have options, and increasingly, they're using them. Every millionaire who leaves takes with them not just their tax contributions, but their businesses, their jobs, their investments, and their economic activity. It's not just the direct tax loss. Though that's substantial, it's the multiplier effect. When someone wealthy leaves, they take their staff, their suppliers, their lawyers, their accountants, and everyone else who benefits from their economic activity. But here's the truly maddening part. This was entirely predictable. There are decades of research on tax competition and capital mobility. There are countless examples of what happens when you implement punitive tax policies in a globally connected world. The outcomes aren't mysterious, they're inevitable. So here we are, watching British millionaires flee to Monaco faster than cabinet ministers flee responsibility, driving up rents in a principality the size of Hyde Park while simultaneously draining Britain's tax base and economic vitality. It's a masterclass in unintended consequences, except there's nothing unintended about it if you paid attention to basic economics. The question now isn't whether this policy has backfired. That ship sailed along with the millionaires. The question is what happens next. Does the government double down on their failed experiment? Or do they swallow their pride and admit that maybe, just maybe, you can't tax your way to prosperity by driving away the people who generate the wealth in the first place? One thing's certain, Monaco's real estate agents are having the time of their lives, while British Treasury officials are probably wondering why their calculator keeps showing negative numbers. It turns out that when you chase away the people who pay the bills don't magically pay themselves. Revolutionary concept. That's all for today's dose of economic reality from British Tribune. If you enjoyed watching the government shoot itself in both feet simultaneously, make sure to subscribe because trust me, there's plenty more where that came from. Hit that notification bell, because with policies like these, the hits just keep coming. And if you're a millionaire watching this from your new Monaco apartment, well, thanks for the entertainment value, even if you're not contributing to our tax base anymore. Until next time, this has been British Tribune, where we follow the money, even when it's fleeing the country.